Okay, you ready? Hi, people at home. That's what I do. Okay, I'm sure because you guys have to listen to me on Hybrid B days, right? Okay, here we go. So the nice thing about absolute values right now, for what we're going to do right now is we're just going to make a table and graph them. And how we're going to pick the values for our x values is we're just going to randomly select them. And we're going to talk about how I picked them. The other thing you need to know is that when you have finalized your absolute value graph, it's going to look like a V. So it's basically two lines going in different directions, like two straight lines, and they come to a vertex. But your graph should look like a V, okay? So I am just going to pick some random points for us, and then we're going to graph those, and then we'll be done. So here we go. Helps when I get to mine. So I noticed that my graph goes from 0 to -7 and 0 to +7. Okay, so I also know that my graph only goes up to 7. So that means when I pick them, I'm just going to pick the farthest out. If I pick -7, -7 minus 2, I'm just doing that in my head real quick, that's -9. -9, the absolute value of -9 is +9. Well, I don't have room for that. If I put 6 in, I'm still going to get 8. -6 in, I'm going to get 8. Not going to work, so I'm going to start with -5. Again, you guys, I'm just testing points. I promise there's no rocket science to picking points for your x values. It's just a matter of what can I fit on this particular graph. If I had a huge graph paper, then I would pick big points, but I don't have a lot of paper, so I'm going to start with -5. And I'm going to go odd, and then I'm just going to continue. Now I am going to tell you that we're probably going to have to add 1 point because of something that happens when we do this. And then you guys can see it. So the nice thing also about absolute value, once you get really good at graphing them, you're going to notice that each point has a mirror image. But what you need first is your vertex. You got to figure out where your vertex is. And we'll talk about how to figure that out after we figure this out. So I'm just going to do it a little bit a long way first for the first one so you guys can see how I'm getting this point. So again, you guys, I just picked these randomly, just down here, plug it in just to see if I could fit them all in the graph. So I'm going to take -5 and I'm going to plug it into the absolute value. So it's going to be the absolute value of -5 minus 2. So it still stays in the absolute value. -5 minus 2 is -7. And what is the absolute value of -7? 7. So now all I'm doing is taking these points and plugging them into the absolute value and finding out what y is. So you guys, I'm going to do the absolute value of -3 minus 2. What is -3 minus 2? -5. And then the absolute value of -5 is? Do you notice that whenever you do it, you're getting a positive number? The only way that you would ever get a negative number as your answer is if there's a negative in front of the absolute value. We're going to do one of those, but so you can see that we're going to start getting positive numbers because we're taking that absolute value. We're not going to write all the absolute values the entire way down because I think, you're going to start getting the picture. The absolute value of -1 minus 2 is -3, and the absolute value of -3 is 3. So now we can, the absolute value of -2 is 2. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. The absolute value of negative 1 is 1. 3 minus 2, so you guys, I'm just putting this 3 in. 3 minus 2 is 1, and the absolute value of 1 is 1. And now I'm going to put 5 in. 5 minus 2 is 3. The absolute value of 3 is 3. So we're going to graph these points. You can see that I have some mirror images, and then we're going to find out that we don't have a vertex when we graph it. So let's just graph it. So we're going to go over to negative 5, and we're going to go up to 7. So we're going to go over negative 5 up to 7. Negative 5 up to 7. We're going to go over to negative 3 up to 5. So again, over to negative 3 up to 5. Over to negative 1 up to 3. 0, 2. 1, 1. And then 3, 1. Okay, I want to stop there for a second. Do you see how all of a sudden it became a mirror image? Do you guys see how it became a mirror image? There has to be a point where it came down to that V, so we're missing one. So what's the only number I didn't pick as an X value in the positives right now? I picked 0, 1. What did I skip? 2. So you really need to know where it equals 0. So I'm going to put 2 right here. 2 minus 2 is 0, and the absolute value of 0 is, so we're going to go back and put this point, because you need that point where it goes down and then comes back up. So again, you guys at home, we need this point because we need to see when it comes down and then goes back up. So now we're going to graph. So I graphed 3, 1. Now I'm going to graph 5, 3. Yep. And you guys, I could have graphed another one. You kind of can see how it's going to go. You could keep going. And we're just going to connect the dots. And there's our V. You want to pick as many points as possible because you want to see that clear pattern of a V. So again, you want to pick as many points as possible. Once we get into our parent function chapter, we probably won't have to make a table and pick all these points. We'll learn how to graph it. But the thing that I need you guys to know now is you randomly pick your X's. You always need to find that vertex point, this changing point, where it comes down and then it shifts to up. And you need to plug it in. And you need to know it's a V. So you need to know that when you graph it, it looks like a V. You're just going to make a table of values, and that's all that you need to take away from today. The more points you use for your X's, the more it will look like a V. So that's what you guys want to do. Okay. Are you guys ready? Can I flip? I need to flip mine, but we're going to go to 4B. You ready to do 4B? To be or not to be? That was a funny, not so funny thing. Okay. So the first thing I look at is how my graph is set up, okay? My graph is set up to go from -7 to +7, so those are my X's. So for my table right now, okay, because my graph goes from -7 to 7, that's where I'm stuck with. I can pick any X value between -7 and 7. My Y value is the same thing. It goes from +7 to -7. That means that my answer really shouldn't go past -7 or +7. And that's only for the graph. It doesn't mean that's where your line stops. It's just those are the points that we're limited to picking right now. Okay, so I know I have to add 1. So I might be able to pick -7. So let's do, well, you know what? We can pick -7. We can do odd numbers. We can do even numbers. It's up to you. I did even numbers. You want to do even numbers? You guys are like, I don't care. Just do the problem. So again, you guys, my x values can be in between, any number between -7 and 7, because that's what's on the graph. It doesn't mean that's those are the only x values. It's just for graphing purposes. So I'm going to start with -6, and I'm going to do all the even numbers. Now, you can do this, but remember, like the last one we did, we had to put that vertex in. We might not have the vertex, so you might have to do that. And you'll know which number you have to pick because there'll be a big gap. You'll see it going up, but this one is not going to go up because of this negative sign. That negative sign means it's going to open down. So, if I plug this in, the absolute value of -6, so I just want to show you guys. The absolute value of -6 is +6, but this is the opposite. So the opposite of the absolute value of -6 is -6 plus 1, which is -5. So it's basically, this negative is basically taking the opposite of what you get. So the opposite of the absolute value of -4 is -4. -4 plus 1 is -3. Then we're going to get -1. We're going to get +1. We're going to get -1 again. We're going to get -3. And we're going to get -5. So how I got those numbers is I just plugged in the x's into here. Again, you guys, there's no science about how I picked the numbers for my x's. I just randomly picked them. I just went with evens. You could have done odds. You could have done -7, -5, -3, 1, -1, 0, +1, 3, 5, and 7. You still would have gotten the same answers. Now we're just going to graph it. But because of this negative, you're going to see that the V is going to open down instead of up. So -6, -5. So -6, -5. -4, -3. 1, 2, 3. -2, -1. -2, -1. 0, 1. 2, -1. 4, -3. 6, -5. Did I graph that right? 2, 1, 4, -3. Okay. And then we're going to connect them. You can always see where it's going to be peaked and it's going to come down. If you needed one more, you could see that you really, because there was, we went from 0 to 1, you could see that there's a 1 in there. We would have gotten 0, and there's 0 and 0 for that 1. And it opens down because of the negative. It opens up when there's no negative. And you guys, it doesn't matter what's inside the absolute value, it's on what the outside. So if there's a negative on the outside of the absolute value, then that makes it open upside down. Does that make sense? Are you sure?